Good morning, everybody. Thank you again for watching our channel. Once again, we love you coming back again to enjoy the content we share. And as you can see from the title of the video today, I want to talk about a very major step that my family is taking. Yes, we are moving back permanently to Kenya. It's going to be massive transition moving from Long Beach, California to the village in Kenya. Now, everybody who we've told that is shocked and surprised as to why we are taking such a drastic step. So I'm going to give some of our reasons for considering the move from the US to Kenya permanently, but with a few caveats. So the first caveat is the timeline. Now, I don't know what the timeline really is. It will just depend on when things fall in place. So it might be a few years, a lot more, or it could be shorter. So I'm not saying we are moving right now, but I'm saying we have begun the process of transitioning back permanently into Kenya. So again, there's no definite timeline, but we know for sure that we are beginning to move back on a permanent basis. And so many folks that I know in my circle have moved back from diaspora, different countries. Others have moved from Kenya to diaspora, and that's a very typical thing. So there's really nothing unusual to that. For my family specifically, moving back is really a process. It is not an event that is going to happen at one time. It is something we are going to work on over a period of time. Because again, we can't just wake up and uproot ourselves and just move without a plan. And so I think actually our plan began 4 years ago when we started putting certain things in place, which I will share. So in this video and in the next set of videos, I'm going to share with you all about 10 reasons that make the transition from diaspora to Kenya really compelling for us particularly. Now, the experiences I'm going to share are very specific to us as a family, for those of us who live in this particular corner of the US. So please don't misconstrue what I'm going to share to mean that it applies broadly beyond our reality. My experiences is going to be different than my neighbor's experience and other professionals. And some of the things I describe are things that may have happened to me and not to other people. And so I just want to share this is very specific to us. Now, besides the timeline and the idea that what we are sharing is specific to us, the third caveat that I also want to mention before I get into the details is that when we talk about our interest in returning back to Kenya, this should not be interpreted to mean that those who are choosing to make other choices are less than us. There are many folks who have moved out in the diaspora, have made a comfortable life, and for a host of reasons have little desire to come back to Kenya. In fact, some may not have that opportunity. Others, like I have a good friend of mine whose entire family is in the US. So for his family, the incentive to move back permanently is less compared to us. And so for us, we see it as a personal choice. There is no value judgment. If folks choose to live in the diaspora permanently, that's fine. Those who move back, that's fine as well. So you pick what works for you. Now, again, the other caveat that I also want to add is that those who want to come back home, people do that based on a number of reasons. They can choose that because they've gotten whatever took them to diaspora and they're satisfied. Others have more compelling personal reasons. But I must say that even when folks choose to move from the diaspora, it does not necessarily mean that diaspora is terrible. In truth, our life in the US has been nothing short of amazing in so many ways. There's a whole lot we've been able to accomplish because of the opportunity to live and work in the diaspora. So our reasons for moving out of the US has nothing to do with the fact that it's a terrible place. No, the US has been an amazing place. But for us, after almost 20 years, we think it's time to begin transitioning. The other compelling reason as to why we've really kicked things on a high gear at this point is that we've also seen friends who've been in the US for over 30, 40 years. Many of them are in their 60s or 70s. A good number of them early in life did not have any interest in transitioning to Kenya. However, later on in life, as they hit their 60s, 70s, they started changing their minds and now they're working towards coming home. So as a family, we made a decision that we want to set things up so that even if we have a change of heart at some point, the option of moving to Kenya is still there. And thankfully, for me personally, I married a person who is Kenyan, loves Kenya, has every interest of transitioning to Kenya. Now, that scenario is not always possible. There are many folks who are married to non-Kenyans or who are married to Kenyans who really don't want to move back to diaspora. So for us as a family, this was not a difficult decision whatsoever. It was just a matter of when and a matter of making sure that everything lines up. So as I said, in this video and in the next set of videos, I'm going to share about 10 things that we are considering as we begin to transition back to Kenya. So reason number one is about quality of life. Now, quality of life means many things to many people. And for us, I'm going to share about 6 things that really tip the scale for us. The first of those is family. For my wife and I, most of our family members actually still live in Kenya. And so spending time in Kenya often means spending quality time with the people who really care about us. And so we anticipate that moving back to Kenya will really just give us more opportunity to enjoy family, especially now that our parents are still here, our grandparents are still here. We'd like to spend as much time as possible with them. So family is a major reason that plays into quality of life for us. And so that's one of the reasons we are transitioning back. The second one, again related to family, is relationships. Since both of us were born and raised in Kenya, we've had decades-long relationship with folks that we grew up with, went to school with, and the majority of them still live in Kenya. Those relationships are incredibly meaningful. Again, over the years that we've spent in diaspora, we've developed new relationships that are still very valuable. And we still anticipate that even when we move permanently, we will still maintain many of these relationships. But we realize that it's a good time to reconnect with the relationship we've always had with folks back in Kenya. Now, the third thing that also plays into quality of life is emotional and mental health. While these are issues that emerge in the diaspora, back in Kenya, there's one major factor that really insulates us from challenges with emotional and mental health. The biggest part is being surrounded by a ton of people who care about you and are always around to support you. And so we've noticed that anytime we spend a significant amount of time in Kenya, our emotional and mental health really thrives. And a big part of it is that within the space where we live in Kenya, we are never alone. Like right now, my sister just walked in. Anytime we come in, I have a lot of siblings who are still in Kenya. There's family around. And when you have a tight-knit community that love you, it's another really good factor that when it comes to emotional and mental health. So because of that, and because of cultural familiarity, Kenya is one of the few places I describe as a place where I can basically let my hair down. I don't have to really guess a whole lot. Every space I walk in, I'm very familiar, maybe except for a few things. But it's really a place where I get to let my hair down, which leads us to the next factor under quality of life, cultural fit. Having lived in the diaspora, we've had the opportunity to live and spend time with folks from all over the planet. While humans share a lot, and that's been our experience, the amount of cultural fit that we get in Kenya is unlike anything else that we've experienced in other places. And so what that means is that rarely do I walk into a space in Kenya where I really have to guess stuff. It's very easy to interpret things. I don't have to guess things. People understand me, my language, my culture. It's a very, very easy fit. And so the emotional energy that it takes to navigate things in Kenya is far, far less than it does living in the diaspora. Again, when you're in the minority, it's a very different experience. In Kenya, obviously, when we show up, we are the majority, both in terms of culture, language, race, and all that. But living in California, we are always in the minority. And so the challenge of cultural fit is always a challenge for those of us. And this is particularly acute for our kids who are technically Kenyans, but they are also Americans because they are born in the US. And so one of the main challenges they experience is that they don't seem to fit anywhere because they are not 100% Kenyans culturally, given that they are raised outside, but they're also not 100% Americans because they're raised in Kenyan household. So the issue of cultural fit is less of a burden for us when we're in Kenya than it is when we're in diaspora. Now, I think that will still be a challenge for our kids, but we will see what happens with that. And then for those of us who are interested in environmental issues, living in the village particularly, which is exactly where we are moving to, is excellent because there's very little environmental toxins that you associate with urban environments. For example, currently we live right outside Los Angeles, which is a major metropolis. Now, Los Angeles, as some of you already know, has had a massive problem with smog and all kinds of toxins in the environment, something we don't expect in the village. So out of quality of life, there are about, this is 6 factors that are critical for us. That is family, relationships, emotional and mental health, capacity to let our hair down, cultural fit, and of course, the serenity of the environment. So besides quality of life, the second major reason as to why we are planning to move permanently back to the village in Kenya is the issue of cost and affordability. Currently, we definitely live in Long Beach, California, which is probably one of the most expensive places to live in the US. So many things cost quite a bit, particularly housing. And so in the village, for instance, there is no such thing as property taxes. The land that we live in, there's nothing we pay the government. Now, this is not true everywhere. Those who live in the city, there are some parts where people pay something they call land rates, which is a Kenyan version of property taxes. In the village, we absolutely pay nothing for property taxes. So that's a major boost. And then the second reason is that in the village particularly, food is very inexpensive. And the major reason as to why that is the case is because many of us grow our own food. We have our own spaces where we plant vegetables, we've got fruits going on and all that. So when you plant your own food, you simply supplement a few things here and there. And that makes the cost of food very affordable, particularly for folks in the middle class. Now, that may not be true for folks whose economic circumstances are slightly different, but the cost of food in the village is really low as compared to life in the diaspora. And then the other major thing about cost is the bills. Because we live in the village, we are privileged to actually have solar power. So we don't pay electricity at all. Even though we are connected to the national grid, we barely pay electricity because we are full on solar. And even though we are connected to city water, we have our own well. So that means we don't have any water bills. And at the same time, essentially the other bills that you typically associate with urban living, that's non-existent. In fact, the primary bill that we have in the village is basically internet and the cost of hiring folks who are helping us.